Hi, I'd like to show you how to throw a bottle. And a bottle is a cylinder. It's a closed form that comes in on itself. I'm going to show you how to collar it. Now, got about 3 pounds of clay. And everything's the same as usual. To get the most height out of the bottle, I'm going to make the inside flat on the bottom. So basically you start by throwing a cylinder. And you want it centered right down to the wheel head. Decide how wide you want the bottom to be. And remember, as you're throwing, that bottom's going to come in. So it's going to be narrower than it starts out now. And also, if you want a very narrow base, don't try to don't go with a really tall, hard to get down to the bottom hump of clay. So I'm going to open. Decide whether you want to trim a foot on it. Now, feet tend to make the form a little more elegant. Not necessary on bottles to have a foot. So I'm leaving maybe a 1/4 of an inch of clay down there, maybe a little less. Now, when you open, instead of opening like a bowl with a curve, open it flat on the bottom. And to do that, your fingers will want to keep it in this angle, so you have to bend your hand, almost like you're grabbing bicycle handlebars. So, and this middle finger is what's doing all the work. I'm going to pull that in. Wet the clay. You may notice I hold the sponge so I can feed water as I need it, instead of going back and forth and back and forth. So I've opened. There's a little bit more clay up here than down here. I'm going to smooth off and compress the bottom. You can go from the outside to the center, or it's easy to go from the center to the outside. And think of diving into a swimming pool like this. Your right hand is doing the work. This finger is doing all the work, that middle finger. So you put it down in the center, hold still, and then gradually go to the outside edge. And if there are any irregularities, you'll get a little piece of clay coming off. Remember, as you get this tall, you're not going to be able to get down to that bottom to compress it, to finish it. So you want it looking good now and be compressed so it doesn't crack before you start raising it. So now I'm going to raise the walls. Now sometimes when you open it, it spreads out a bit. It's always easy to get it to go out. It's hard to get it to go back in. So always, always, always try to keep it in. The natural thing that people want to do is to put their hands on both sides to bring it in. That's great when you've got a lump of clay and you're centering it. When the clay is open like this, all you need to do is lock your elbow into your body, put your hand on the outside, and push in. And I'm pushing it in an angle so it's tilted in just a little bit. And then I'm always supporting it on the inside. Now it's time to lift. Get a good starting point. Make a groove down at the bottom. Wet the wall. Now, you can use your knuckle for larger pieces. You can use your finger for smaller pieces. Some people use their whole hand against it. Well, not good, because you really only want one pressure point, be it your fingertip, be it your knuckle. You can get away with using the side of your hand. So it would be the side of my hand here and my fingers on the inside, but more friction. So it's easier and usually better if you come in, push in from the outside, hold on the inside, and then go straight up. So it's like a straight up motion. Your hands are going to want to come in because you're pushing hard to get all that clay to move from the bottom. They'll want to move together. Avoid that. Stop that. What you want to do is push in, hold still, and keep your fingers the same distance apart. Also, don't try to get it the total height in one pull. Usually it takes 3. After a while, there's that point of diminishing returns where it's not getting any higher no matter how many times you lift it. But 3 is usually a pretty good number. So I'm going to push in on the outside, hold still. My hands are locked together, and I'm going to lift up. And you want a little more pressure on the outside than the inside, so the clay cones in. And once you get it up, straighten that edge. Just use the hard part, side of your finger, put these 2 fingers underneath the rim, and just let it glide around the top. Thicken it just a little bit. You want to keep that under control. Wet the walls again, and to wet the walls, all you need to do is squeeze water right on the top, and it travels all the way down and all the way around. So you don't need to slather water all over it. Just squish, and it coats the whole piece. Undercut again. You don't want that ski slope. You want to have a nice groove down there so you're getting that clay up from the bottom. Put your hands together, push in. Now this time I'm going to push out as well, and you'll see a bulge happening where I'm pushing out from the inside. And that's my middle finger. You see it? Now once I have that established, then I'm going to lift up slowly. Right about here, I relax so that wall doesn't get too thin up in here. I'm going to want to bring this in. I want to leave clay up in here. I want to get as much of this clay up as I can. So I'm going to start relaxing on the next pull. I'm not going to put a lot of pressure up on that top third. As you're working, keep adding water so your hands slide and taking water away so it doesn't sit in the bottom, making that bottom soft. I'm going to put another groove. Now, my hands can't touch. As soon as they can, they will. So you've got to really pay attention. Sometimes, some people hold their breath. And also, remember, don't move your hands up till the wheel's gone around a bunch of times. Someone said 16 times. Just wait till it goes all the way around before you move. If the wheel's going really slowly, you have to hold your breath and stay there until you move your hands up and let it go all the way around a bunch of times, and all the way around a bunch of times. So the best strategy is to have it going a medium speed, not screaming fast, because if you make a little mistake, it'll throw it off center. Medium speed, easy to control. So I'm going to push in at the bottom, push out, hold still, and there's a roll of clay in between my fingers that I'm lifting up. Now about here, I'm going to relax, but keep going up. So I want to keep that top part a little bit thicker. Because if that's thin, when I start messing around with it, if I shape it, make it round, or when I bring it in, it's going to want to collapse up there. So you want to keep that a little bit on the thick side. So I've got a cylinder now. Let me see if I can do one more pull. Relaxing here. And up. Yeah, that was worth it. So now, before I go any further, I'm going to rib off the outside slip and straighten it out a little bit. To do that, use the straight side of the wooden rib because it's rigid. And don't put it straight on at a 45. Angle it a little bit at a 90 degree. Angle it a little bit. And then my finger is going to be opposite the rib on the inside. I start at the top and work my way down. You can also go from the bottom and work your way up. Now, got my cylinder. I could bring it in and make a straight-sided bottle right now. What I'm going to do is round it out. I'll show you the easiest and the best way of shaping it. A lot of people will use their hands and a lot of water. The more water you put on it, the softer the clay is going to get, and it's going to eventually want to collapse. If you can keep as much water off of it as possible and as little friction as possible, you're going to have a lot more time to work and get that form. So it's absolutely perfect. So what I use are ribs. So you could use a metal rib like that. You could use a plastic rib. That's a nice gift card that's been cut into a perfect shape and the edge was smoothed. So I'm going to take this and blow it out from the inside. Just stretch it out from the inside. Now the opening's a little bit wide. I can get my hand in there pretty easily. What I'm going to do is make that a little narrower. So this is the way you collar or make a bottle. You make a triangle with your hands. Put your hands around the outside. Of course, make sure there's lots of water on there so it slides nicely. So it's a triangle. Start below where you want it to come in and just gradually bring your fingers up. And you can see how it's distorting into a triangular shape. When you get to the top, relax, let go, it goes back to being round. Keep that top edge straight. Now, sometimes when you do that, you're pushing all this clay into a smaller space. It may start going up and down, like this one's doing. It's starting to move up and down. So just take your needle tool and just trim that so it's straight again. Don't have to. Just keeps it a little cleaner and a little nicer. Okay, now I'm going to start bulging it out from about here. I'm leaving this a little bit thicker, a little bit taller, and then I can refine it once I get the basic shape I want. So I'm going to take my little round plastic rib, support the top edge, and you take your rib and put it in, and so it's not at a 45, at a bit of an angle on the inside. Gently press it against the inside of the pot and then push out a little bit. And just like when you're lifting, you do it in stages. You do a little bit, come back and do another pass. Also, make sure the wheel goes around enough times before you move your hand. So I'm holding this really tight. I'm putting it down into the pot, holding still. See, it's actually scraping some of the slip off on the inside. And I'm going to just move from the top down. Bulged out a little bit, not much, a little bit. Do it again. Now, a lot of people will try to throw the pot out. I talked about the excess amount of water and how the pot's going to get softer when you do that. Another thing that happens is it actually gets shorter. By stretching it out like this, what I'm doing is I'm thinning these walls, and it doesn't get much shorter. You go from the top down. You can also go from the bottom up. And then this is one of the hardest parts, is looking at the profile, looking at that shape. Some potters will put a mirror in front of themselves so they can see the profile at a different perspective. So I just get onto the side like this and look this way. Okay, well, that's not a bad shape. Now, before you do anything else, make sure you don't leave water inside. Now, you can use a sponge like this. You can also use what I call a sponge on a stick. And what a sponge on a stick is just, this could be a chopstick, could be a skewer, could be an old paintbrush, could be a dowel. Small piece of sponge with a rubber band. You get this wet, and it's a lot smaller and easier to handle than my hand. So now I'm going to bring in the neck. So, triangle, and in. And as you do it, it thickens it up. You can throw it a little bit more. Now, my fingers are touching now. Instead of your hand, holding your hands like this, change how you're holding your fingers. So, it's going to be like this. Grab your middle finger with your thumb, both sides, and the clay is going to hit here, here, and here. 3 points. This is getting thicker and a little bit higher. Keep this shoulder at an angle. You can always flatten it out, but if it's at a bit of an angle, it won't collapse on you. Also, it's a little bit thicker in here. So I can come back and push that in with my fingertip. My outside finger is a little bit lower than my inside finger. Come back in, do it again. And this is pretty thick up here. I've got lots of clay. That's one reason it's still under control. And remember, keep this area thicker too. If this is too thin, it will want to collapse on you. Let's do it gradually in stages. Think about the design. Think of pots like people. You want a strong shoulder. You want nice transition elements, the point where the shoulder becomes the neck. want a strong lip. Too many people make the lip too thin. Now to trim this off, put your finger on the inside, hold this very, very tight. Hold the needle tool tight, and just let it scratch gradually through the top. It'll be straight again. Try not to get water inside. Okay, now I'll just finish off the neck. Got all those lines there. What do I do? That's where your metal rib comes in. Take it and bend it. So I'm taking my thumb, putting it in the middle, my fingers on the outside, and bending it. It makes a perfect curve. I have a friend who did really large round forms, and he wouldn't just use a little rib like this. He used a full-size metal ruler. You can just take it, scrape off that slip, and refine that shape. This was a eureka moment for me. I found I could use the reverse curve to really clean up that inside shape. Chamois the lip. Don't want any sharp edges. And then you can take and trim that extra clay off the outside. Now this whole time, that's been supporting the form. So what I'm going to do is take the dull side, kind of defies logic. I'm going to take the dull side facing me, not the sharp side facing me, the dull side facing me. Rest the stick against the side of the pot above where I want to cut off. And then I'm going to draw it down to the wheel head. So I'm going to wet this a little bit so it slides. And start at the top and work my way down to the wheel head. Trim off that extra water, that extra clay. Now, if you've thrown this well, you won't have to do any trimming to it, just a little finger trim to smooth off the bottom. I'm going to come back and make sure that line is nice. Then I'm going to undercut it a little bit. I'm going to put the stick in, push it in, and it'll take on that angle. The further in I push it, the bigger the angle will be. And then I'm going to hold the sponge behind it so it doesn't tear. Before I take it off, I'm going to look at the form one more time. Maybe just a little bit more. Clean the water off the wheel. You don't want to draw water underneath it because I've ribbed all the water off. It's plastic clay. I can pick this up. As long as you don't pick it up with your fingertips, pick it up with your whole hand. As low as you can. It's thicker down at the bottom. Get your hands on it before you put any pressure. Tilt it a little bit, and you'll just be able to pick it up and put it down without any damage. So I'm going to hold the wire straight. Also, to keep it straight, I'm going to turn on the wheel really slowly as the wire gets pulled through. Always clean off that little extra bit of clay on the wire. Okay. Dry your hands off. Put your hands down as low as you can. Tilt it and pick it up. There's an advantage to doing it this way. There's some clay left on the wheel. There's no water left on the wheel. I can take my next ball of clay and just throw it directly down on that wheel head. I'm ready to throw another, and another, and another. So that's the way I throw bottles. Thank you.